July 4th, 1187. The horns of Hattin scorched under a punishing sun. 50 knights Hospitaller rode into the inferno, only 50, against 3,000 Saracens. They did not turn back. By sunset, steel had shredded flesh, shields had splintered under scimitars, and blood ran hot enough to boil. Chronicles praised it as valor. They never mentioned the secret that bled beneath the banners. One knight whispered of betrayal in the court of Jerusalem. A royal mistress turned messenger. Her lover's pillow talk delivered straight into Salah ad-Din's war tent. Before we continue, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read everyone. The city they rode from, Acre, reeked of salt, sweat, and sin. Whispers coiled through its alleys like smoke. Lady Sibylla, queen consort, had met a Saracen envoy in secret days before the charge. Her chambermaid later vanished, last seen carrying a scroll bearing both her seal and her scent. The scroll promised more than peace. It promised maps, routes, weaknesses. But that story never reached the scribes. Instead, they wrote of Templar purity and Hospitaller honor. Yet among the 50 thunderous riders was Raymond d'Amiens, age 27, whose brother had died by poison only weeks before, and whose dagger had once lain beneath the same sheets where Sibylla whispered warnings to her lover. Dust rose like ghost breath as the knights crested the ridge toward Hattin's twin peaks. Their armor baked against their flesh. Their horses foamed with fear. But they did not slow. Not when they saw banners black with crescent moons. Not when the Saracen archers unstrung 1,000 bows. Raymond rode third from the front, lips cracked, aching to kill. Not for glory, not for God, but for revenge. His brother Guy had been found liver black, tongue swollen, chalice untouched. The physician blamed heat stroke. Raymond knew better. The poison was myrrh-laced, a blend favored only in Mamluk courts. He had smuggled the sample to his commander, but the report was buried. Men said it was war. Raymond knew it was murder, and murder walked in their ranks. One of those 50 rode with blood already on his hands, and not from battle. The first clash tore through bone and belief. Saracen arrows arced like scythes across the sky, slicing through chainmail joints, sinking into horses' flanks. Screams drowned in sand. A dozen knights fell in the first minute, but Raymond pressed forward, tendons burning beneath his mail. He screamed a name, not a prayer. Gerard. The knight beside him, 34, fox-red beard turned mud by blood, had served Guy his last wine, claimed innocence, claimed loyalty, claimed he had left before sundown. Raymond saw through it then, as he saw through it now, in the flash of steel and terror. The battle roared around them, a vortex of curved blades and shield smashes, but Raymond's war narrowed to one face, one heartbeat. He drove toward Gerard through Saracen ranks, shield up, sword angled low, not for tactic, but to gut a liar. But the desert had its own code, and before Raymond could reach him, fire came from the sands, naphtha pots launched by know-nothing arms, flames licking their horses' legs, searing their banners into black cinders. Knights scattered, voices tearing like banners in the wind. The charge faltered, but did not break. Not yet. At the rear, cloaked in dust and silence, rode Sir Alain de Béziers, age 41, a holy relic pressed to his breast, a serpent's move hidden behind his sanctimonious gaze. He had once served as quartermaster, keeper of supplies, and rumor keeper of men's sins. It was Alain who had last locked the armory door the night before Guy's death. It was Alain whose tent flaps stirred that week beside Sibylla's. No one questioned him. He prayed too loudly. But Raymond remembered how Alain had once whispered a Saracen poem in court Arabic beneath his breath, a lover's verse. As the knights split and blood fountained across burning stone, Alain turned his horse, not to flee but to circle, drawing closer to the fallen, picking from corpses only those with sealed messages, pendant rings, and matching daggers. Not loot, evidence. Raymond saw him, saw the pattern, realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was a purge. Someone wasn't thinning enemies, they were pruning allies, pruning secrets. And the harvest was far from done. Somewhere in the melee, Sister Melisande, the battlefield healer cloaked in ash and blood, knelt beside the dying and the doomed. But her hands, wrapped in linen and sanctity, concealed more than salves. 9 months before Hattin, she had vanished from Jerusalem's infirmary for an entire fortnight, returning with a burn scar across her forearm and whispers stitched to her shadow. It was she who had tended Guy before he died. She who smeared herbs on his lips. She who walked alone the night Sibylla met her Saracen envoy. Now, at Hattin, her poultices healed as many as they finished. Raymond caught her eye across cracked stone, the weight between them thick with implication. Melisande did not flinch. She wiped her blade, a hidden stiletto, not a surgeon's tool, on a dead knight's surcoat. In that instant, Raymond understood. The plot was cathedral deep. Priests, knights, courtiers, healers, all woven in a web stitched with love letters and soaked in poison. The Saracens weren't the enemy anymore. The real war was inside the armor, and the worst blade was always the one you never saw coming. The sun neared its apex, and the charge splintered into isolated struggles, knight against dozen, steel drowned by sand and blood. Raymond dismounted mid-strike, catapulted by a bolt to his shoulder, his armor cracked, vision blurred. He landed hard beside the corpse of a boy. Blonde curls matted in gore, no beard, perhaps 17. His tabard marked him as one of the king's illegitimate kin, a royal bastard sent to die anonymously. Raymond dragged himself to shade behind a scorched shield, his breath sour, his intent sharper than pain. To his left, Sir Gerard knelt, blade buried in a Saracen's neck, but his other hand held something stolen, a silver signet ring Raymond had seen on Guy's finger during their last supper. Gerard looked up, met Raymond's gaze, not with guilt, but knowing. He knew too much. Gerard rasped, "So do you." No time for answers. Another volley screamed down from the ridges. Arrows thicker than locusts blackened the sky. The desert, tired of secrets, began to bury them itself. Raymond raised his sword one last time, not toward the enemy, but toward the traitor who had once shared his fire, his tent, perhaps even his blood. The desert did not care for vengeance, but Raymond swung anyway. The clash turned feral, less a battle than blood-hunted frenzy. Raymond's blade met Gerard's with a shriek, steel biting steel, bone jarring with each strike. Around them, knights died faceless, Saracens pressed in fury, but these two did not see war now, only reckoning. Gerard laughed once, low and rueful. "We tried to save the kingdom," he said, locking Raymond's wrist. "You tried to save your brother." Raymond's fury was answer enough. He twisted, sidestepped, slammed his bruised weight into Gerard's side and brought his knee into the man's gut. They fell, grappling in dust and entrails. Then a sound. Not war, but soft, deliberate. A second blade. Raymond turned. Sister Melisande stood, caked in blood, her stiletto red to the hilt. Gerard spasmed. She leaned close and whispered, "He betrayed you both." Gerard's eyes froze wide. As he died, Raymond caught the scent. Not blood, but rose oil, Sibylla's scent, on Melisande. The healer turned spy, turned killer. The queen wanted silence, she murmured. Now keep it. She rose and vanished into chaos. Raymond lay stunned beside Gerard's corpse, not victorious, not whole. The charge had failed. The kingdom would fall. But in that dry hell, under that cursed sun, at least one truth had burned through the lies. The 50 rode to slaughter, but not for glory, for guilt, for secrets, for sins dressed in armor. Hattin drowned them all. But the wind, even now, still whispers what the scribes would not. The knights were never outnumbered. They were already outmaneuvered by lust, by treachery, by the knives they carried in their own damned hearts. By twilight, the slope below Hattin gleamed with bodies, not banners. Of the 50 Hospitallers who rode that cursed charge, only 7 still drew breath, and none stood. Raymond crawled across shattered stone, each movement carving pain deeper into his ribs. Smoke stung his eyes, but he could still see the final banner burning atop a broken spear. A Saracen captain approached, curved blade ready, eyes unreadable, but he did not strike. Instead, he knelt and cut free Raymond's helm, revealing not an enemy, but a man too ruined to oppose. "Mercy?" the warrior asked in worn Frankish. Raymond shook his head. "Write this," he said, spitting blood. "We killed ourselves before you ever touched us." The Saracen nodded, solemn, almost sad. Across the ridge behind him, Sister Melisende disappeared into the retreating smoke, her robes now bearing the mark of a Saracen medic. The final treachery, survival by defection. Legacy sealed not in glory, but in betrayal. And so the field of Hattin belonged not to victors, but to whispers, of poisoned goblets, of lovers who lied, of blades buried not in enemy hearts, but in brotherhood. The crusade ended not with a trumpet, but a kiss that reached the wrong ears, and a dagger that stabbed the wrong back. The wind still moans across the caldera, no longer singing of faith, but echoing a warning. Kingdoms fall not to armies, but to the secrets they dare not confess. The Templars arrived at the battlefield's edge too late to save anyone, but just early enough to start another war. Led by Grand Master Gerard de Riedfort, their 50 lances cut through smoke like prophecy, only to find ash and annihilation. Of the Hospitallers, only Raymond stirred, blood-crusted and broken beneath the dying sun. De Riedfort ordered his men to dismount, not to tend the wounded, to inspect the corpses. He demanded rings, seals, parchments, as if hunting for proof that what had died here wasn't just a crusade, but a conspiracy. Beneath Gerard's body, they found nothing. Beneath Melisande's abandoned kit, buried under a burned cloak, they uncovered Sibylla's seal, split in two. A message unfinished, a pact unraveled. The Grand Master read it once, then fed it to flame. Some sins, he said, are too holy for history. Months later, Jerusalem fell. Raymond disappeared. Melisende lived under a new name, healing Saracen princes with the same poisoned grace. Sibylla vanished into legend, a queen who surrendered her crown, or perhaps sold it for sanctuary. But Hattin remained. Not just a loss, but a lesson. It wasn't the blades that doomed them. It was the whispers before the war horn. The lies lovers whispered. The truths warriors buried. And in the end, what killed the kingdom wasn't 3,000 Saracens. It was 50 guilty hearts on horseback, charging toward damnation. Years later, a pilgrim passed Hattin's blackened caldera, dust choking the wind, stones still scorched from the fire of that doomed charge. He found no shrine, no names carved in memory, only silence and ash. But buried beneath a cairn of broken helm and rusted chain, he uncovered the last relic, a silver ring, engraved with a hospitaller cross entwined with a crescent moon. A symbol never worn in public, never acknowledged in page or parchment. The ring was Raymond's, or Melisandre's, or both. No history recorded it. No priest blessed it. And that, perhaps, was the point. For in that final fusion etched into dying silver lived everything the chronicles buried. Love dressed as treachery, faith hollowed by deceit, loyalty poisoned by desire. Hattin did not end with surrender. It lived on in every vow broken behind closed doors, in every knight who rode with a secret stitched closer than his tabard, in every queen who whispered to her enemies because her own court whispered worse. The crusade burned, but its embers still glow in the silence left behind. A silence shaped like a betrayal no one was holy enough to name. And so the horns of Hattin faded not only from banners, but from memory, intentionally. The monastic scribes who survived the fall of Jerusalem rewrote what they could, sanitized the sacred, and stitched a narrative clean of treason and seduction. The 50 became martyrs. Sibylla, a saint. Melisandre, unnamed. Raymond, unmentioned. But even buried secrets leave residue. In Damascus, a Saracen scribe recorded a battle won by whispers before swords were drawn. In Tyre, a merchant's ledger listed the sale of hospitaller relics alongside rose oil and myrrh. And in a monastery near Tripoli, a forbidden psalm was found decades later. Too poetic for liturgy, too specific for parable. It told of a queen's curse, a healer's blade, a knight betrayed not by enemies, but by oaths poisoned at their birth. It ended with one line, carved into the margin in a hand small and sure. We charged toward God, but found only each other and our sins. The battlefield has since grown silent, but the soil remembers. And in every gust that races across that cursed plain, if you listen closely, you might still hear it. Not the clash of steel, but the hushed breath before the betrayal. The knights are long dead. The secrets are not. So ends the tale not of heroism, but of hunger. Hunger for power, for love, for absolution in armor. What the Battle of Hattin proved was not the futility of charging against numbers, but the absolute ruin of charging while hiding too many truths behind your visor. Valor was the mask, betrayal its grin underneath. Raymond's ring vanished. Melisandre's blade was never found. Sibylla's seal split, but never silenced. And the kingdom? It did not collapse under Saracen might, but buckled under the weight of unspoken alliances and whispered infidelities. They built churches over that soil, monuments to saints who were not, and martyrs who sinned more than they prayed. But the ground remembers. Beneath every altar, the bones still murmur of a field where faith was feigned, loyalty was least, and love was the sharpest sword of all. There were 50 knights, but 3,000 ghosts, and not one died clean. Now, centuries collapsed into dust and pageantry, and all that endures are echoes. The whispered sins no crusade could scrub clean. Stone by stone, abbeys were built atop the massacre. Monks chanting prayers to veil screams the desert still remembers. Every relic hauled from Hattin, every bone purified, only deepened the lie. The truth remained buried, not with the dead, but in the living silence of those who dared not write it. For history is not made by steel alone, but by the betrayal that directs its aim. And thus the charge that defied reality became the memory that reality defied. 50 knights rode to slaughter 3,000, but what they truly slaughtered was the soul of a kingdom that dared to believe steel absolved sin. Listen closely the next time wind rushes across stone. That is not the cry of martyrs. but the breath of a queen in bed she should never have entered. The clink of a ring passed beneath moonlight. The final heartbeat of a knight who died not for God, but for a truth no chronicle dared record. And so the legend of Hattin passed not into scripture, but into whispers. Half-truths traded in brothels, taverns, and courts, where lips lied more elegantly than blades killed. Raymond was never canonized, Melisande never caught, Sibylla never condemned. Their sins melted into myth like wine into altar cloth, visible only to those who knew to look beneath the stain. But somewhere, in a locked chest beneath a vault that no cleric dared open, the final scroll waits, unsealed, unfinished. Raymond began it with shaking hands and blood-damp ink. The kingdom fell not on its knees, but on its back, in beds, in back rooms, in betrayal. He did not live to finish it. No one did. But maybe that is what cursed the land. Not the battle lost, nor the sins committed, but the silence sworn afterward. A silence thick as sacrament. So if you stand upon that scorched ridge today, press your palm to the earth. You may feel nothing, or you may feel everything. Lust, steel, prayer, poison, and the thunder of 50 guilty hearts, still charging toward confession, still denied absolution by the stones that watched and remembered. Not a tale of glory, but the debt glory never paid. So let the chronicles lie. Let the names be etched into cathedral stone, washed by incense and recited in chants. Let Sibylla be sainted beside martyrs whose blood never carried the weight of betrayal. But those who truly remember Hattin, the desert, the bones, the wind, know better. They know that Raymond's vengeance died with him, that Melisandre's blade still haunts every forgiven sin disguised as strategy, that the queen's perfume lingered longer in enemy tents than in courtly halls. What happened that July was not warfare alone. It was passion unsanctioned. It was loyalty sold beneath stars. It was the clash not of armies, but of urges no commandment could bind. That battlefield was not sacred ground. It was sacred proof that kingdoms fall not when armies break, but when hearts do. Hattin left no victors, no saints, only ghosts who still ride by night, 50 strong, soaked in guilt, galloping not toward paradise, but toward the hell they made with every secret kept and every truth defiled. Listen, the hooves have not stopped. They never will, and so it ends, though ending was never the right word. What happened at Hattin did not pass. It festered. The silence sang in every battle fought after, in every vow whispered in armor, every kiss that tasted of treason. Raymond's name faded. Melisande became legend or lie. Sibylla's scent still clings to the parchment no one dares read. They tell tales of glory, of divine will. But the horns of Hattin echo a different gospel, one that proclaims no salvation, only consequence. A charge made not for redemption, but for ruin. Steel met flesh, lie met life, love met its grave, and the ground, scorched and unyielding, remembers every step. You may pray on that ridge, you may light candles for the dead, but the ghosts do not ask for light, they ask to be heard. 50 sins in shining mail, remembered not for courage, but for the murder of truth dressed as faith. That was the charge that defied reality. And it did so because reality itself had already cracked beneath the weight of desire. So let the ashes speak, where the scribes fell silent. Let the blood that soaked the limestone write what no monk dared. Hattin was not a holy defeat, but a carnal confession. Raymond, Melisande, Sibylla, their names burned away in psalm and shame, yet their sins stand more eternal than any stone chapel. What shattered there was not strategy, but sanctity. Love was their heresy, betrayal their prayer. And though no chronicles bless it, the truth is etched, bone deep into the earth. It was never about 50 knights against 3,000, but about one kingdom tearing itself apart from the inside. The Saracens did not win Hattin. Lust did, lies did, and history, cowardly, complicit, looked away. Let the wind whisper the rest. That truth buried in armor always returns. And on the horns of Hattin, it still rides. So ends the charge, not in legend, but in lament. No statue was raised for the fallen, no hymn sung for the betrayed. Only the desert remains, scorched and impartial, holding the secrets others dared not honor. Raimund, whose blade sought vengeance, was swallowed by silence. Melisende, whose hands healed and killed with equal grace, vanished behind foreign banners. Sibylla, queen and conspirator, became either martyr or myth. Their sins were not erased, only redacted. And so the final truth of Hattin lies not in numbers, but in motives disguised as faith. Lust cost the kingdom more than steel. Lies steered it faster than any warhorse. And love, forbidden, corrupted, denied, burned deeper than the sun that day. Listen long enough beneath those haunted peaks, and the wind may still confess it. What died at Hattin was not just a crusade, but the last chance for truth to matter more than myth. So let that be the epitaph of Hattin. Not glory, not martyrdom, but silence. A silence paid for in sweat and secrets, in daggers held too long, and eyes that looked away when truth burned brightest. The Crusaders prayed for salvation, but summoned their own damnation, disguised beneath silk prayers and silver vows. A kingdom that bled itself from within cannot blame the sword from without. Raimund's last breath, Melisende's vanished steps, Sibylla's kiss under foreign moons. These were the true defeats, not the battle lost, but the faith betrayed. And so the charge that defied reality ended not with a martyr's death, but with a whisper that outlived the scream. Kingdoms fall more from lust than from loss. And on the horns of Hattin, every stone bears witness, and there let it rest, under scorched sky and judgmentless stars, in a grave unmourned, unblessed, untouched by Scripture. No anthem will resurrect the truth buried at Hattin. No relic polished pure enough to cleanse what happened when loyalty crumbled beneath desire. Raimund's sword rusted somewhere beneath foreign dust. Melisende's whispers, if spoken again, swirl only in winds that know no mercy. The queen's last lie danced between silk sheets and strategy, unwritten, unforgettable. The chronicles may chant of faith, of valor, of divine order. But the battle that ended a kingdom began in bedchambers and behind curtained oaths. So let the world remember what history chose to forget. 50 did not fall in glory, but in guilt. And when their hooves thundered down the slope of Hattin, they did not charge to meet their fate. They rode to escape it. What followed was not martyrdom. It was memory, bleeding eternal into stone, written not in ink, but in regret. And if there's anything left to say, it is this. Hattin was stained not by defeat, but by denial. The red soil still sighs beneath those peaks, haunted not by ghosts of battle, but by the truths no blade could silence. Raimund, Melisende, Sibylla, their stories were not carved into marble because stone cannot bear the weight of such betrayal. The lie was not that they lost. The lie was that they ever meant to win, for they rode not into battle, but into absolution's impossible embrace, armored in guilt and veiled in passion. And where those 50 fell, the soul of a kingdom was buried with them, unconfessed, unforgiven, unforgettable. So end the chronicles not in triumph, but in tremble. Not with banners raised, but with veils drawn over eyes too cowardly to witness the kingdom's true undoing. The horns of Hattin remain, jagged, ancient, unmoved, not monuments to faith, but to failure dressed in divine intention. Every oath sworn before that doomed charge cracked beneath the heat of hidden lust and backroom bargains. They did not die for a cause. They died for the lack of one. And now, beneath that scorched sky, where silence reigns louder than sermons, where names have faded but betrayal echoes eternal, the wind alone keeps vigil. It hums no hymns, only confessions unspoken, only truths no cathedral dares to echo. 50 knights rode toward salvation. None arrived, but their sins did, riding still, armored in regret. Forever etched in the dust their hooves once scorched. And so we close the scroll, not with benediction, but with burden. Hattin's ghosts ride on not as heroes, but as echoes of choices damned and desires indulged. No relic absolves them. No chant redeems them. What remains is the hollow clamor beneath cathedral stones, and the silence thicker than incense rising in halls, too afraid to speak of queens seducing fate, of healers wielding poison, of knights whose greatest sin was believing loyalty could survive lust. Let the legend fade. Let the soil keep its secrets. But know this: when steel met betrayal on that blistered ridge, it was not God who watched. It was history, turning its face away, never to forget, only to refuse to speak.